Justin Fields may still play quarterback again this season for the Chicago Bears, but the thumb injury he suffered against the Minnesota Vikings will ultimately prove to be the beginning of the end of his time in Chicago.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On the show today, we check in on Justin Fields' injury, the thumb dislocation, and why this really means the start of the end for Fields. This sets the stage for the transition away from Justin Fields as the long-term quarterback option for the Chicago Bears. Even though the injury is not his fault, and really a lot of the circumstances haven't been his fault, but the way the situation is going in Chicago, there's not much he can do at this point to save his job when he's sidelined with a thumb injury. I also want to get into the Bears' decision during the game against the Vikings to make a change at center, taking Cody Whitehair out and putting Lucas Patrick in, and whether or not that will continue moving forward, and why the Bears, and specifically Matt Eberflus, won't call it a benching and seems to be kind of talking around some of the reasoning behind it. We'll wrap up with the decision to hire a new senior defensive analyst, Phil Snow, formerly of the Carolina Panthers. We'll hear more about what his role is going to be and what some of his history is that brought him to this new role in Chicago. But I want to start with Justin Fields, because what seemed like just a dislocated thumb injury, all of a sudden I think means so much more for the short and the long-term future of Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears quarterback position. And ultimately, this injury is the point where we say, yeah, there's no coming back. There might be coming back literally this season, but there's no coming back in the big picture. Justin Fields' time is ticking as Chicago Bears quarterback. This 2023 season was the year Justin Fields and Luke Getsy and the entire offense had to prove it, to come out and show that Justin Fields is the guy, without a doubt, to be your long-term quarterback in Chicago. And any answer other than a definitive yes was going to be a no. Even if it's still like a maybe, or it's not a definitive no, you still hold on to, well, maybe he could still do this, there's still something there, there's still more to Fields. We haven't seen the best of Fields yet in Chicago. Those things could all be true. But if the answer is not definitively yes, he has unquestionably proven that he should be the Chicago Bears' long-term answer at quarterback, then the answer will be no as a result. Because as you go through the rest of this season, the Chicago Bears are 1-5. There seems to be little to no chance that Matt Eberflus can save his job as a head coach. It would take a miraculous turnaround through the rest of the season and for the team to start performing in ways that we just have not seen over the course of not only this season, but last season. Crazier things have happened, I suppose, but all signs are pointing to Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy being fired as the Bears head coach and the coaching staff in general. Ryan Poles, different conversation, but the head coach and the coaching staff, gone. New head coach and new coaching staff will come in. They will come in to what's expected to be 2 top 5 picks in the 2024 NFL draft. Potentially the number 1 overall pick. There's even the possibility of having the number 1 and number 2 overall picks. But the Chicago Bears are not going to have the number 1 overall pick in back-to-back NFL drafts and pass on the opportunity to draft the top quarterback in the draft 2 years in a row, unless they know definitively, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Justin Fields is the guy that they want to hitch their wagon to the next 5 years. At this point, the decision is either give Justin Fields a long-term contract extension or move on from him completely and draft a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. I suppose there could be a middle ground here where you keep Justin Fields and draft the number 1 overall pick and use Fields as sort of the bridge transition quarterback to the rookie. But I think the point still stands then that the clock is then still ticking on the end of Justin Fields in Chicago, because unless Justin Fields could have used this season to prove that he was the guy, then they have to draft the quarterback number 1 overall. And if they draft the quarterback number 1 overall, then that will be the future of the quarterback position in Chicago and not Justin Fields. It becomes a matter of time whether you trade Justin Fields this offseason or whether you let him come to camp with the rookie number 1 pick behind him and make that a quote-unquote competition. But then it's only a matter of time before Fields is gone from that point. So Fields has not played his last snap as a Chicago Bear, most likely. But in the long term, the decision has been made. If he's going to miss time, significant time with this thumb injury, he will not have the opportunity this season to prove to the organization beyond a doubt that he is the guy at the quarterback spot. And if he can't do that, then they will be forced to draft a quarterback with the early draft picks they're going to have next year. And the new head coach that replaces Matt Eberflus is also going to want his own quarterback and not be hamstrung to try and ride it out for another year with Fields and pass up on back-to-back years with the number 1 overall pick, not taking a quarterback to be the real long-term future of this team. So I think as much as it sucks for Justin Fields, he's caught in a bad place with a bad coaching staff and an injury that's not really his fault. And it's ultimately going to lead to him leaving the Chicago Bears sooner rather than later. I certainly think he could go somewhere else and still have success in his NFL career. Certainly will be rooting for Justin Fields and want to see him be a successful quarterback. I just don't think it's going to be with the Chicago Bears and certainly not with this Bears coaching staff. And this Bears coaching staff isn't going to be able to save their jobs with a backup quarterback playing the rest of the season either. So it all sort of piles on where it's like the injury makes it almost impossible for Fields to prove himself to the team, and it makes it almost impossible for the coaching staff to save their job. And as a result, the Bears will just be in a position where they can't afford to not draft a quarterback this year. And if they draft a quarterback this year, that's marking the end of Justin Fields' era in Chicago pretty much from that point on. It sucks. And we all wanted better. And we're all rooting for better. And hey, maybe, just maybe, a miracle can happen here, but that really feels like the direction that it's going to go. In the meantime, it's all the Tyson Bagent show until Justin Fields can get his grip strength back and get ready to go to potentially play again. And we'll see which center is going to be snapping to Tyson Bagent this upcoming week, because the Bears benched Cody Whitehair during the last game. Oh, but Matt Eberflus, he's not calling it a benching. We'll kind of go through what the decision was and what the Bears are saying about it next on Locked On Bears. This episode of the Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is here to help connect you to professional mental health services in a way that's convenient and easy and good for you. Going to therapy is a big part of my own personal mental health regimen, and I do it online just like with BetterHelp, and it's really something that is important to keeping me at my best. You know, just like you go to the gym to kind of keep your body at its best, not because your body's broken, but just because you want your body at its best. I go to therapy for the same reason, to keep my mind and my mental health at its absolute best. And BetterHelp is a great way to get started. If you've been thinking about trying therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, it's convenient, it's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. They'll match you with a licensed therapist. And you know what? If the first therapist just isn't the right fit for you, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. DoorDash is here to make sure that you always have everything you need when it comes to keeping your stomach full, keeping your pantry full, and being ready to go without having to leave your house, especially on game day. You know, when it's timeout, you can place an order with DoorDash. When it's at halftime, you can get your DoorDash time. And don't need to root for your team on an empty stomach. You can order on DoorDash and save on your football party watch favorites. You can get your chips and dips and nachos and everything you need at DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Or you can get prepared before game day. You don't have to run to the grocery store and go through that zoo while everyone's trying to get their groceries ahead of game day. Let DoorDash take care of it for you, and you're going to get up to 50%. You're going to get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter in our promo code LOCKED23. That's 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget, LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. During the Bears' loss to the Minnesota Vikings, after Tyson Bagent came in, we saw Cody Whitehair on the first drive. Tyson Bagent strip sack. Okay, disaster, but it happens. And then in the game comes Lucas Patrick, a new center. After a little bit of Bagent with Whitehair, we went to Bagent with Lucas Patrick. And they showed us, they cut to Cody Whitehair on the sideline. He's standing there, seems to be healthy, doesn't seem to be an injury situation despite everything else happening in that game. That felt like a real injury, fest. Justin Fields was hurt. Injury was on our mind. It was like, oh, did Cody Whitehair get hurt? No. They just put Lucas Patrick in to have a different option at center. This comes after Cody Whitehair had some pretty consistent issues snapping throughout this game and even the last game. The last game, you could say, okay, he was kind of thrown into the mix when Lucas Patrick got hurt. Whitehair hadn't been practicing at center. So at least in the first game, you could kind of understand maybe there's some rust to knock off there in terms of snapping the ball. But after an extra long week of 10 days to get ready for the Vikings, and you have not only snapping issues, but then issues picking up the blitz, issues with the protections being called properly, some of which is on the quarterback, some of which is on the center, some of which is on the offensive coordinator and the staff. But you have these sort of cascading issues, and then boom, Lucas Patrick's in the game. So that looks to me like a benching. Like you took a player out and replaced him for a non-injury reason, largely reflective of the level of play that we saw on the field. Matt Eberflus says not so fast, but I'm not sure that I fully believe him.
Yeah, but to me, the switch at center, Cody came out after Tyson's first series. Why did that switch occur right away if that was the plan to have Lucas out there with Tyson?
Well, during the game, obviously, we said that, Lucas, came in because we wanted to settle Tyson down, and it was good to do that. I thought it really did help, settle him down a little bit. And again, he's got more experience, and that's where it was, and that's what we decided to do it.
So he wasn't asked directly, is it a benching? But he was asked about it being, a reflection of the snaps and, whether or not it was sort of no one ever used the word benching, but a move in relation to the level of play that we were seeing on the field, right? Like that sort of thing. And the answer was no. We wanted to settle Tyson Bagent down with Lucas Patrick, and I'm not exactly sure how a different center in that regard is going to settle the quarterback down in quite the same way, right? This is not, like this. The issue with the snaps is not when they're under center; it's shotgun snaps, and so, it's not like the quarterback and center exchange is like directly right there next to each other. It's just the ball coming in the air, and is it not the way to settle the center, the quarterback down by putting in a center who's going to snap the ball better? Like you could say, okay, well, maybe Bagent has more experience taking snaps from Lucas Patrick. But again, that only matters when it's under center, because the shotgun snap is essentially just being thrown at you when you catch it out of the air. There's not really like the same idea of like needing to get that experience getting the snaps from them. So like, are just the couple of under center plays that Tyson Bagent played, which are mostly shotgun plays anyway, is that enough to just say, well, he needed that to calm him down? Or was it a reflection of, hey, yeah, wait a minute, these protections were not being called out properly throughout the course of the entire game, and Whitehair snaps had been significantly worse than they needed to be. The other thing Matt Eberflus said is that Lucas Patrick has more experience, and that's also not true, at least in the traditional sense. Like Cody Whitehair played center for the first handful of seasons of his career here, and he's been in the league longer than Lucas Patrick and has had more total games played at center than Lucas Patrick has in their respective careers. The one caveat there, I guess, is that Lucas Patrick has more experience in that Luke Getsy's system because he played in it in Green Bay. But like Lucas Patrick only played, 7 games last season and is up to, 6 games this season that he's appeared in. And then, of course, played for Luke Getsy for the couple of seasons before that in Green Bay. So like he does have more familiarity in that regard. But Cody Whitehair was here all of last season too. Is the difference in experience between Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair in this system that much more valuable to Tyson Bagent at the end of week 6? Or is that a head coach who just doesn't want to say they benched Cody Whitehair? Is that a head coach protecting his 31-year-old veteran guard and center who's the leader of this offensive line and trying not to make him look bad by admitting like, hey, yeah, we benched him? Which, I mean, sure, maybe that has some merit. You don't want to throw Cody Whitehair under the bus, but you can also like not treat us like we're kids. Like we're adults. Cody Whitehair is an adult, and we all saw it, right? They're not hiding anything. We all saw Cody Whitehair leave the game healthy, Lucas Patrick come in the game and replace him at his position. That sort of thing happens all the time in the NFL. So are you trying to protect Cody Whitehair's feelings? Cody Whitehair, we've heard him talk for many years now in Chicago. He's been here for what 10 seasons? No, that's too many. 3, 6, 7, 8 seasons. Like, he's not so much of a emotional in his feelings kind of guy from what we can tell. Like, yeah, he got benched and they put someone else in because he was playing poorly. I think you can just say that. You can even say it gently, but you don't have to pretend like this isn't a benching or wasn't a benching in the game. It doesn't even have to be a permanent benching. Like, Cody Whitehair may still start at center this upcoming week. You can say that, like, hey, Whitehair was struggling with the snaps, and we wanted to get him out and get Patrick in there and, settle things down for Bagent a little bit so he didn't have to worry about the snaps for now. And then, you know what? We'll see how they do at practice this week, and we'll decide our starting center on Sunday. Like, that's how you treat grown men in the NFL, and that's how you talk to the media and the fan base, right? This is not hard. You're not protecting anything or getting a competitive advantage. Like, there's no reason to not call this a benching, because that's what it was. They benched a player for another player who they thought would play better in that situation. The problem is that they're both bad. I mean, Lucas Patrick's snapping was a little better, I guess, but the blocking's about the same for both of them this season. And if anything, Whitehair might be a little bit better as a blocker overall, but they've both struggled mightily all throughout the season at both positions. And just to rub a little bit of insult into injury, I looked it up. Sam Mustipher with the Baltimore Ravens has allowed 0 pressures so far this season. He's their backup center. He started 2 games, has played in 4 games, and has not been allowed a single pressure on the interior of their offensive line. So that's where things are right now for the Chicago Bears at the center position. And we saw Dan Feeney's also an option, but when he got into the game a few weeks ago, his first snap was way off target. So you've got a bunch of centers on this team, and none of them are good. Maybe Doug Kramer can come back and be an option. That's really where we are right now, scraping the bottom of the barrel on this offensive line. Not the only change that Matt Eberflus talked about. The Bears have hired a new defensive senior analyst, Phil Snow, who's not going to be a replacement defensive coordinator for Alan Williams, but he is going to be an important part of this defensive coaching staff. We'll get more specifically into what Phil Snow will do here and what his background is and why Matt Eberflus chose him next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Gametime, the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. We're talking Bears games, of course, but also concerts, comedy shows, theater events, you name it, they have it at Gametime. And Gametime has a lowest price guarantee to make sure that you're always going to get the best deal for your tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And I can tell you right now, you can get good deals on Bears Raiders tickets for this upcoming weekend. I think mostly knowing that Justin Fields is not likely to play, you can get tickets for $117 right now on the Gametime app. And for the rest of the season as well, you're always going to find some good deals there. Plus, you can see exactly what your view is going to be from your seat, so you know what you're going to get before you go to the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, Redeem our promo code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Chicago Bears don't have a defensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus will still be calling your defensive plays every week and on the sidelines. But he did hire, as expected, a senior defensive analyst to come in and fill that role to kind of help out Matt Eberflus. That's sort of what the impression I get is that with Alan Williams gone, obviously play calling duties go back to Matt Eberflus, but then there are some other things that it's just like, it's nice to have another guy in there to do that Eberflus can't just take it all on himself because he's got to do the head coaching stuff. And so to get a senior defensive analyst in there helps take care of the other like game week issues and game week responsibilities, but not necessarily game day responsibilities. Here's how Matt Eberflus announced the hiring and described the role that Snow is going to play on this defensive staff.
In terms of the senior defensive analyst, we have hired Phil Snow, the former defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. Obviously 40-some years of experience in college and in pro, and been a defensive coordinator at both levels. And we certainly welcome him and his experience. What he will be doing is our advanced scouting. So along with our personnel department, they do the personnel side of it, obviously give us updates on personnel, on tendencies and all those things, but he'll be doing advanced scouting for our defensive staff. He'll be giving summaries of all the situations during the course of the week, and then he'll be here in the building the entire week, and he'll be here Monday giving us those reports, Tuesday giving us those reports as we do our game planning, and that'll be certainly helpful to our defensive staff. Is he going to be at games, on headset and all that? No, he's not. He's not going to be at the games. He's not going to be there functioning as a coach during game day. He'll simply be an analyst that's going to be helping us out for the advanced scouting.
Rarely has Matt Eberflus been a clear communicator at press conferences, but he did a pretty good job there of making it clear that, Phil Snow is not some shadow defensive coordinator, right? Who's going to come in and, operate as defensive coordinator without taking the title, and kind of still be meddling behind the scenes and putting his fingerprints all over this Bears defense. No, he was pretty clear there. He's basically a pro scout, right? He is looking at opposing teams and not even looking at the personnel wise, because he even said the personnel team, they're keeping us up to date on the players on the opposing teams, but Snow is diagnosing scheme, tendencies, what opposing offenses are doing, what you should expect from the play calling, from the route concepts, from the run concepts, right? From the protections. I don't know if he's going to look at just at opposing offenses as a defensive guy, or if he'll look at opposing defenses as well, just kind of scout them for the offense. It's not exactly clear what that all looks like for Snow, but right, he's an intel generator. He's a guy who's going to watch tape and tell the team what to expect and prepare for. And so, in that sense, he's not going to change the way this Bears defense looks on Sundays, but he is going to help shape the preparation for this team. And I think it's valuable to have, it's always good to have other guys in there to have some of that, just another set of eyeballs with some experience behind it too. Because, Phil Snow doesn't have the world's most impressive resume, but he's been around the NFL. Well, he's been coaching for 40 years all the way down to the college level. But he's been in the NFL a bit, has been a defensive coordinator, has been a defensive assistant before, and has been experienced in a few different systems that should give him a variety of perspective to be able to offer here as maybe a slightly different voice than just Matt Eberflus. So most recently, Phil Snow was the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers under Matt Rule for those 3 seasons when the Panthers themselves weren't that good. They had a lot of offensive problems. Their defenses weren't terrible, though. They weren't great, but for being a really bad team, I know each of those 3 seasons, their defense ranked higher in terms of points and yards, higher than their offense. And so it is hard to have a great defense when your offense is absolutely terrible and your offense is putting your defense back on the field over and over again. I'm not here to say Phil Snow's defenses in Carolina were great by any means, but okay, not terrible there. And again, he's not your defensive coordinator. He's not calling the plays. You're just looking for him to be a smart guy who can scout opponents and have some innovative things to say about how to attack them or how to prepare for them. So you're not too concerned there. Before that, he was defensive coordinator at Baylor. Before that, defensive coordinator at Temple with Matt Rule. Where at Temple, he coached and developed some pretty good prospects on the defensive side of the ball. Linebacker Hassan Riddick, who Is he with the Eagles now, or did he bounce to DC? Is he actually in Carolina now that I think about it? I don't remember where Hassan Reddick ended up after free agency this season. But he he was a little slow getting started. He is now for the Eagles. Good. Okay, I had that right. He's with the Eagles now and playing pretty well, and kind of a unique hybrid pass rusher linebacker type player that found his niche in the NFL and has played really well. Also, Matt Ioannidis, a really strong defensive lineman who I think gets a little bit underrated across the board here, but has had some really good seasons early on in Washington, flashed quite a bit. 7.5 sacks, 8.5 sacks, and then has since dropped off a bit and was with Carolina just this past season with Phil Snow. And then he also coached a really good special teams linebacker, Tyler Medikevich, who's bounced around the NFL a bit. So, he worked with some good players. His track record here is not terrible. I think the one big blemish on there, I mean, maybe among others, is he was a linebackers coach for the Detroit Lions under Rod Marinelli, which is the connection for Matt Eberflus. Eberflus and Marinelli coached together. They're good friends. Snow and Marinelli coached together. They're good friends. Marinelli connected Snow and Eberflus, and now they're together in Chicago. But Snow was the linebackers coach in 2008 when the Detroit Lions went 0-16, you may remember. So he's coached some bad defenses, and he's coached some okay defenses, and he's coached some pretty good college defenses. But to me, it's less about how good of a defensive coordinator he was and more about how much does he know about defensive football. And it seems like he's been exposed to different head coaches, different defensive philosophies, and that's all really valuable too. And if you want to feel better about him being on that 2008 Lions defense, do you know who the defensive coordinator was on that team under Rod Marinelli? Rod Marinelli head coach, and then Phil Snow was linebackers coach. You know who the defensive coordinator was? Joe Barry, current Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. So, if you want to complain about Snow being on a bad 0-16 Lions team, the Packers defensive coordinator is the same defensive coordinator that coached that 0-16 Lions team. So you can always leave feeling pretty good about what they're working with up there in Green Bay compared to what we're working with down here. So that's the Phil Snow experience. I think it'll end up being not as big of a deal as it was made out to be when it first announced, hey, we're looking for somebody. I think over the course of the season, we'll kind of forget Phil Snow's hanging around, just like Mike Pettin was a couple of seasons ago. You kind of forget that they're hanging around, but it's always news to know when they've got other people helping them try and win football games, and we'll see if the defense continues to play at a high level or a better level as we've seen the last couple of weeks, or if they'll revert back down to earth just like the offense has too. You can be sure we'll break it all down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're keeping up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Make us your first listen every day. And if you're looking for a second listen, we do have a new podcast here in the Locked On Podcast Network, Renner Ranks, with Mike Renner formerly of Pro Football Focus, breaking down all things football and ranking all of the best teams, all the best players at every position, and you name it, Renner is on top of it. So you can go check out Renner Ranks if you're looking for something new to introduce into your podcast feed. Just make sure you come on back to Locked On Bears tomorrow for your next opportunity to bear down.